All right, here we go. Hey guys, back for the 5th episode now. And today we've got some of the OGs, as I was just saying, on here with these guys.
Yeah.
And even if you don't immediately recognize their names, you'll probably still say OGs. I know Geodesic. They've been around for a while. We competed against each other back when we were in DGFX. You know, you guys have continued to challenge a lot of the grid in a lot of the different classes as everything's progressed. And I think you guys even have your own series that you run too. So excited to get into talking with you guys today and learning about you guys a bit more. And even for me, like, you know, a lot of people that, or maybe some people, I don't know how many actually end up listening or watching, but, you know, for a lot of them, it's you know, we're putting a face to a name for the first time. And it's cool, you know. Miguel and Carlos both, you know, have seen their names on iRacing or in you know, the Discord servers for such a long time. But, you know, as is usual with sim racing and other online things, you never really get a chance to kind of, you know, meet face to face or actually talk to them. So it's definitely a cool thing, you know, for me today to be able to do that with people that I've been on the grid or against on the grid or been hosting for so long. And yeah, definitely looking forward to it. So I guess, you know, as is usual, we'll kind of get into some casual stuff. We'll learn a bit about Miguel and Carlos to start, and then you know, we'll get into Geodesic and, you know, what you guys are doing now, what are your plans for this season with IVRA, and all that kind of stuff. So Miguel, we'll start with Miguel, I guess. And you know, we were talking before we started up here. We're all in the same kind of age range. We're getting starting to push that 40, you know, mid-30s, 40 mark.
Yeah.
And you know, time, we don't have it as much for the sim now, but you guys are still able to get on there, and part of that is just your lives become busier as you know, as you get into that like 30s and 40s mark. And you know, part of that for you is you recently moved from Florida to Georgia, I believe, and picked up a new job, which is pretty cool. And I think a lot of people in the sim world will appreciate and kind of want to hear more about. So why don't we start off with that?
Yeah. So I just moved up to Georgia, as you said. I'm actually working for Collins Aerospace. I'm a simulation technician. Basically, what that means is I work alongside with the Air Force. They have a plane. It's called the E-8C J-Stars. It's like a reconnaissance plane, essentially. It works alongside like the AWACS plane, etc. And essentially, it's a simulator. It's like a level D simulator, the top of the line, basically. It's what the pilots train on. And I basically get to work on that every single day. So since I'm a pilot as well, in my, you know, previous life, I should say, I got some of my licenses and stuff like that. So that kind of helped me to kind of get the job. And I used to be in the Coast Guard as well. I did that for 8 years. And
Really?
the combination of all that stuff, the combination of all that stuff helped basically get me the job. And I basically get to fly a sim all day, every day.
That's sick.
It's a pretty cool job.
So you have like in real life pilot's license as well? Is that like just a PPL or is it something else?
Yeah, I have my private pilot's license and my multi-engine. I was originally going to be a pilot, you know, back when I was going through college and all that stuff. But with the 08 crash and stuff like that, you know, being a pilot wasn't very financially feasible at the time, especially because you got to climb the career ladder, essentially, you know, basically start from nowhere, go through the regionals, and then maybe finally get into like one of the major airline carriers. And I just had too many friends that, you know, they graduated college and then they had like, you know, $200,000 in debt. for flying and stuff like that, because it's very expensive. I mean, a license can run like 10 to 20,000.
And you've got to log a lot of hours, right, before you even get a chance.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, I remember I had one that, you know, he basically graduated, couldn't find a job, had to work at McDonald's for a while. And I think then he finally got a job at a regional, and they were like, hey, we'll hire you, but you got to take a pay cut. And it was like 24 grand, essentially. So he basically had to move in with his parents, stuff. So seeing all that and just the trajectory of how things were going, I just basically decided to switch my careers over to IT, you know, because I've been doing computers all my life. And that's when I joined the Coast Guard too, at the time. So cool. I did 8 years with them. I was in a unit that, you know, they called them the DOG, Deployable Operations Group. And we basically did a lot of like port security, like high value asset protection. And this is on the water, by the way. We were on a 32-foot boat, essentially, and I was the guy that was manning the 50 cal machine gun that was in the front of it. So,
what? That's nuts.
Yeah, it's got like a 50 cal in the front and then like two 240s on the side. So, you know, you didn't want to mess with us on that day if we were out on the water.
Do you guys like?
And then
I always like, just being in Florida. Do you guys like, if you're out on the water, like how often would you like be out and just like, you know, oh, there's a floating thing of like coke or something like that from like stuff that's trying to be smuggled in? Like I hear about that kind of stuff.
Actually, I never really saw anything like that.
Oh yeah.
The only time we actually did see like a drug boat was when I was deployed to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The Coast Guard basically protects that whole base. And we were out in the water. I think it was maybe like a mile or two out from the coast. And there was basically just a drug boat that just came into our zone, because we basically just have a security zone that we protect, and it's just alongside the coast. And it came into our security zone so fast, and it left so fast that we really couldn't do anything. It was just like, oh, well, there goes that. But, you know,
that's nuts. How does it work with like international waters? Because like, are you between Guantanamo and Florida? Are you in international, or is it still within?
It's international.
Do you know what I mean?
Guantanamo was actually on the south side of Cuba.
Okay.
So more towards like the pointy end of the island, but on the southern tip. So you're nowhere near Florida or anything like that. So it's all.
Yeah.
But we have like our own security zone that, you know, basically all vessels have to, you know, follow essentially. So even the Cubans too. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Crazy. Cool, man.
So that was fun. And then I basically kind of hurt my back, and I had to kind of get out of that. So, and that's when I basically picked up this job with the simulation technician stuff, helping the Air Force.
Cool, man. Very cool.
So, yeah.
And Carlos,
and that's my story.
That's your background. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's not as exciting, I guess, but I think both Miguel and I have a very similar story in that we went to college, and I mean, not just the two of us, we're actually they're involved with flying. They're pilots. There's a few that have licenses and everything.
Yeah.
So we all kind of went through that phase, like, oh man, we love planes. I kind of want to get a pilot license and kind of go through that. So I did go to college for that as well. But I never got to the practical stuff. I did a couple semesters, get most of the written and technical certifications done. And once you got time for the practical and, you know, really start spending the money, then money ran out pretty quickly then.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have much of parental support for that, and I didn't qualify for a lot of the grants and loans. And like Miguel says, like, I basically didn't want to go in and spend $200,000 in loans and then come out and make 20 grand at the end of it anyways. I was like, So my brother's a computer engineer, and ever since we were kids, like we've been destroying computers and putting them back together. So that's always been an inherent thing for that. So I ended up doing random odd jobs between college and 2010 after I left the airline that I was working for. And then I got hired as a sales rep for a major credit card company here in the States. And then just through that ladder, I kind of sneaked my way into data analysis to kind of pretty much where I'm at now, doing compliance and regulatory data analysis, big data and stuff like that. So not exciting. I get to spend pretty much all day in front of computers, just crunching numbers.
But what he doesn't mention is he gets to work from home.
Yes.
He gets to race whenever he wants.
I did. There's perks to that. Yes, there's perks to that. Basically, I'm sitting at my work desk, and my rig is like right there on the other side. So
good for sure.
So it worked for a little while. Probably when we formed Geo about 2016, 17.
Was it? No,
we started in 17. We started officially in
17.
But we were in another team in 16. My daughter was born that year. So that first couple of years, it was actually very easy with her because she was either on daycare or she was napping a lot of times. So you got plenty of free time in between naps to do a 45-minute race or 40-minute race or whatever it was. So I was able to like hardcore. I went like Sven has. I was doing like 4 or 5 races during the day, when it was kind of like at the peak for us. So it does have perks working from home for sure. But with time going by, daughter getting older, and my job responsibilities have kind of increased a lot too. So kind of shifted away from being able to like, I got time to do a race. So so
that's all right.
That's a big challenge.
Yeah, just new challenges and stuff like that, and maybe this is just more casual now, but still have fun with it, right?
Yeah.
Does she ever want to jump in? Like, is she old enough to like?
She's done it. Yeah, she's done it.
Yeah.
She's like, I want to drive the cars, and it's kind of cool to see her experience that. I don't think she's like mentally ready for that yet. But it is kind of cool to have her, share that with me. If I paint her a princess car, maybe she'll be into that. But.
That's funny. That is cool though, man. It's very cool. Yeah. Are you in? Where are you in the States? For some reason, Florida's popping out of my mind.
So I moved to the States in 2001, and I was there for 20 years. And last year, right before COVID started, I moved to Orlando. One of our team managers was here, and Miguel was in Daytona. So we were all kind of concentrated in the central part of Florida.
We were all trying to get everybody to move close to each other.
So we're kind of, obviously we like this area. The theme parks are here, so it was the best option for us. Property was cheaper here, obviously. So we made that decision, and literally, we bought the house at the end of 2019. We closed on March 16, and then like the next day, they closed the borders to Europe, and like the whole thing like really went south.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, well, let's move all our stuff quickly, and then we moved here, and then we were locked in for 4 or 5 months. We really couldn't go anywhere. Like everything was closed. So and then Miguel goes and grabs his shit and leaves. So like, oh man,
I'm moving.
so it was kind of one of those things. But I've been in the Orlando area for like 18 months, and pretty much will be here for quite a long time.
Nice, that's cool. It's funny, like my last trip anywhere really before COVID hit, we at Graphite we did a team meet, and we went to the Daytona 24 for 2020. So we had a few guys
Yep.
from Europe come over, and then my brother and myself flew down
Oh,
from
nice.
Toronto. Yeah, it was
Did
super
we
cool. It was a
go?
great trip. Huh?
Did we go in 2020, Carlos?
Yeah, we gone every
Oh,
year.
dang.
We gone
Yeah.
every year.
We could have
miss each
met
other.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool.
Daytona was always a big thing for us, obviously, because most of us are from Florida or within,
Yeah.
a driving distance of Daytona. So we
I was
always
5 minutes away from the track.
we always made
No way.
made a big trip of it. In a few years, we had some of our guys that came from Canada, or some of the guys came from Belgium.
That's sick.
So, but I think last year we didn't really.
Last year we only did a day.
Like we did the Saturday, like we all
we
went
just did the
Saturday. Yeah, it was a smaller group.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we were kind of done by like, I think it was like dinner time.
Just
we were
the
like
dinner
there
time.
it was like 10 to 6
Yeah,
and we were gone. Because the years prior, we were there. The first year we went is 18.
yeah, we were there
Was
like
when
4
everybody
days.
was there. We did like all 3 days,
Yeah,
and it was just like a big,
yeah.
party fest essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. Yeah.
That's
And also had
And
to do
then-
with, it had to do because like it was the beginning of the DPI era. It was like
Yeah.
a 60-car grid. Like the race was incredible. Like
Yeah, it was
I
good.
wanted to go check all of that, and like it had like a really good party atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then as years gone by, and like the grids decrease, and especially last year.
The weather was really bad too.
And the
those
weather
days,
is, we got
remember?
rained out a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 2019 there was a massive storm, wasn't there? I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we were there
and
for that.
Oh,
it's
God.
funny.
We're
but
like,
that-
we're out of here, man. Like
That
yeah,
year,
like,
my
race is
brother
not
came.
going.
My brother came from Australia, and he doesn't get to see this stuff every day. So it rained a lot on Saturday, and then we come back on Sunday morning, and the race been red flag for hours already. Through
Yeah.
dawn.
Brutal.
And it's like, oh, let's just stick it out. I'm like, they're gonna call this race. We're not gonna see anything
Yeah.
else. So
Yeah.
they do let them race for maybe another 30 minutes. Like it dried out enough, so they race for another 30 minutes, and then it started pouring back down. And this is probably like 9:30 or 10 in the morning. I'm like, they're gonna call it, and we stay there until they called it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could have been home by now.
Yeah, and
So-
it was cold too.
It was
Windy
cold and it was wet. Like you
Yeah,
can do
it was
cold
miserable.
in Florida. You can do cold, but when it's cold and wet, it gets
It's brutal.
miserable.
It was
And
miserable.
for us, it was when we went, and like I've been down to Florida in the past on like family vacation type things, but I couldn't believe how cold it was overnight. Like I think it actually was 0, and I like had originally meant to leave my winter jacket here, just in the car, like at the airport when we flew down, and I just accidentally brought it with me, and really glad that accident happened because definitely needed it. And for us, like for I think a few of us, it was our first 24-hour race ever. So like 3 of us, Richard, Casper, and I, like we all like toughed it out. We stayed up for the whole thing, which it does get really difficult at like a certain point because you're like, I'm just like I can barely keep my eyes open. But definitely worth it, and it was an amazing trip. It was definitely a ton of fun. So hopefully for us, I think, once restrictions come down a little bit more, Spa or Le Mans, I think 24 would be our next meetup, which I'm looking forward to getting back over to Europe. I haven't been there for a long time. Should be super cool.
I haven't been to Europe since 2017. I went to the Expo, like right after I came back from deployment. Went to the Expo, met up with my old team at the time, and they rented a BMW track car, ran around Nordschleife and everything.
Amazing.
It was the craziest thing ever. It was so much fun. Because you don't think like, okay, these tracks are laser scanned, etc. But then when you actually go drive it in real life, it's everything was exactly the same. Like I didn't feel like out of place or anything. Like I knew where I needed to brake, like where all the turning markers were, especially at Nordschleife too, which is like that's a lot of corners. And it was great. That was a pretty fun experience. So we're definitely looking forward to kind of go back.
Nice.
again. Yeah, hopefully next year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think.
But
same. Hopefully the Sim Expo next year. I think that would be a good thing to get to. Something cool to experience. And again, just meet more people that you know them and you know their names, but you've never seen them or met them. So that'll be cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of the grid size with Daytona and just in general, are you guys looking forward to the new LMDH cars?
Oh yeah.
Looking like there's a lot of people already that are entering, which is sick.
I'm a big DPI fan. Like I'm not a huge fan of the hybrid stuff.
He doesn't like
as long as long as it's like automatic.
The boost button.
The boost button. Yeah, like the LMP ones.
Yeah.
Because the LMP ones in iRacing were like you basically just drove it manually. Like it was always manual boost button.
Yeah,
the automatic stuff never worked correctly anyways. So that kind of soiled my experience a little bit. It's like, I don't want to memorize, boost percentages by sectors around the track. That's so dumb. But yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to do, man. I could never drive them because I couldn't work it like efficiently enough to get through a lap to keep it maintained for a whole race.
Not only that, but setting up the car was just, you needed to know so much more in terms of like data and how to set up that car specifically. So it's kind of why we had like our own specific engineer for that car. That just all he did was just LMP1 sets for us.
Right.
And then after a while, kind of like the allure of driving those cars just kind of went away. And, they're kind of at that state now where it's kind of like, do we really need them? Like we could probably get another car that.
Yeah.
But,
I think it's. I mean, I love the idea of the hypercar and the LMDH. It feels a lot like 2017 with DPI when everyone was mega interested on it. Like everyone wanted to participate. So I think there's a lot of excitement in the real life race, obviously. But translating that into the sim specifically, it's like, well, is it going to be just a more powerful, P2? I mean, what are they going to drive like? And like Miguel said, like bigger challenges with the prototypes always been, the setting up of the cars and stuff like that. And it's one of those things that if you miss it by just a little bit, you're off the pace. Like the window for the setup are so small. And if you're not there, you're off the mark. And obviously, now there's everybody selling sets, and there's a million schools out there, but they're never really going to sell you a competitive set. So you need to find ways to do it, and they're not tricky. Even the prototype, which we're fairly confident in working with that car, it's still one of the more complex ones, and the ones that we have to dedicate the most amount of time to try to set up. And even Road Atlanta that we just did, like we felt we were so far off the mark.
Really, I thought you guys were at least for a little bit doing well.
Yeah, well, so we ended up with 2 cars on top split.
Which actually, me and Carlos were in a car. We were like, hey, let's just have fun this race, take it easy. We probably won't make top split because it's only like, what was it, 12 cars total?
12 It was intended to be 12 cars.
And we ended up being the 11th car, I think, or the 12th car. Yeah. So, and our average was 6,500. So we were like, oh my God, like we're in top split now. We'd like no pace. Because we didn't practice, we just were like, "Hey, let's just do this for fun."
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, it's one of those things, especially because it's Road Atlanta. So Road Atlanta, we don't really, I mean, we done thousands of laps there on pretty much any car. But we were, I think we missed the aero part of the car, and we were like really.
Everybody kind of went with like the most minimal wing ever. And we were like 2 clicks higher, so we were just like down on the straight. So, we were just getting out accelerated like every single like corner basically, which is stupid because it's like, we've seen like real data for Road Atlanta in the Audi, for example. Like back in the day. And they were running like tons of wing, and like the springs and everything were like super stiff. And then here in iRacing, it's like, run the softest set possible, and almost no wing, and you'll be fast.
Even like real life Daytona, like we were looking. I think it was the Conti race. So we were in the paddock of the Conti race, what's now the Michelin Pilot Series. And we're walking around and we're going through like all the cars, and like all the GT4s were running like max wing. Like, you could see where the wing is set up, and you see the notches, and you're like trying to match it to the numbers. It's like, well, if they have six holes to put the wing on, you figure multiply that by 2, so like 12, right? So wing from 1 to 12. They were all running like 5 or 6, like all the way. Crazy. And you're like, how is that even a thing at Daytona, right? And then you think about it, it's like, well, probably the sim may not be truly accurate to what they really run in real life. So we kind of, and that was one of our biggest challenges. Because we all come from real motorsport background. We're all done karting, we're all done real driving, track dates, autocross. I mean, we all come from that.
To answer, I was watching that podcast you did with Matsky. No, was it Matsky or was it the one before that? Slade
or Manuel, sorry.
You were. You guys were talking about karting. I don't remember who it was with. I just wanted to answer your question.
It was Max.
It was Max. There is a karting endurance that if you wanted to join, you could. They do it here in Florida too, like for Daytona and stuff like that. So I just wanted to be like, there is stuff like that here, if you were interested in doing it. So
that's cool.
24 hour races.
That'd be wild. I know I saw it when. I think just when we were leaving, I saw maybe on Instagram, like Ricky Taylor and Jordan Taylor were both doing something. There was a 24-hour race that following weekend at Daytona.
Yep. Yeah, I did that race with them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've done 3 24 hours. I've done like 10 or 15 10 hours. I've done a few 6 hours. There's actually, it's like a real race, That's if you ever really wanted to experience what 24-hour Le Mans or 24 hours really feels like, you can do those. And it's just brutal. And I will actually even say that's even more brutal, because driving a kart, it's more physically demanding than it is a real car. So even though they're like 4 strokes, they're not like the FIA karting, 125s or the shifters. So they're not that powerful, but still, especially depending on the track. Like the Daytona track was actually fairly wide and smooth, so there wasn't a lot of loading on either side. A lot of sweeping corners, so you didn't really get beat up too much on that race. But last year, January 2020, we did 24 hours of Orlando, and that was at Orlando Karting Center, which is a certified karting track. So that's much smaller, and they were using Briggs & Stanton's LO6's engines, so they're a little bit more powerful than your regular Honda 4-stroke. And that race, we got beat up. Like we were 5-manning each kart. We had 3, and I was actually running with the guys from Satellite Racing, who are friends of mine. That's cool. We did that race, and I only got to drive like 3 hours total, because I just couldn't physically take it. It was that demanding.
Yeah. So is it kind of like those events? Are they kind of like an arrive and drive? Like they've got kind of like cheap entry level suits that you throw on, and like the padded like Hans device that you just kind of like put on to your shoulders type thing. Like it's not an actual thing.
Yeah. So I started. So there's 2 companies. So there's 2 big groups that actually organize them. So the first ones, when I first started, they're essentially an arrive company. They the balance, everything. So we started with us, and they're like dyno cards. They're older cards, but you essentially just have to show up, pay your entry fee, and you get assigned a card, and off you go. And then as that kind of became more popular, one of my friends, TJ Selma, who worked for My Labs, he kind of segregated and started organizing his own thing, and he essentially made it to the point where if you have your own chassis, you can bring your own chassis. We'll just provide you the engine. Or if you don't have a chassis, you can rent out one from Praga or from Birel or any other manufacturers. You can rent them out, and then we'll rent you out the engine and everything like that. So, and then I mean it's crazy. It's very few times that you can say it's like, oh yeah, I raced karts with Jordan and Ricky Taylor, JJ French, RC Anderson, like all this guy, especially the Taylor brothers, because the Taylor brothers lived like 20 minutes from me, which is actually pretty hysterical. I found out years after. So there's been a growing interest from like real drivers to do this race.
That's cool.
So it's a cool event. It's a cool event. It's just demanding. So
100%. And I guess going back to the sim, so you guys did Petit Le Mans. You had 2 cars. You said the P2 kind of was.
Yeah,
you guys got.
Yeah,
killed.
it was. No, what happened was me and Carlos were in a car, and then Graham and our top driver were in the other car. So, like, I was the number 1 driver for a couple of years. And then finally we got some people that kind of rose up through the ranks. And then now I can basically kind of step back a little bit and kind of focus more on the management side of things with Carlos, because Carlos was also, me and him basically run the daily operations of the team, and everything else pretty much. So they were basically the top car, so they had pretty good pace, and it was just me and Carlos with no practice at all. So we ran a little bit, but then Road Atlanta is basically where you kind of have to force yourself through the traffic so you don't lose time, because so I didn't want to kind of ruin these other top teams' race by kind of being a little bit dickish when it comes to passing traffic and stuff like that. So we were like, hey, let's just park it. We'll go do the 12, which will, and that's what basically we did. So, but the funny thing is we still got killed anyways in that race. As you saw from the video from that guy. I mean, he apologized and all that stuff, but it's like one of those, he had like a blonde moment where he was just like, at the end of the bottom of the hill, just kind of just turned in and
in a rush to
I just burst out laughing.
It was one of those things that it was so bad, like we instantly just started laughing because like
I just hysterically was laughing. It was just like, okay, well, I get my Saturday back. That's cool.
So Miguel does a stint.
I'll go watch TV.
He does a stint. I do a stint. I was literally on my way to the pit, and I didn't even see the car. And when I opened my eyes, like, what happened? It just the cars flipped upside down.
Man.
But like Miguel says, like one of the so we put, especially Petit Le Mans, I always try to make that race as one of my favorite special events. But it was like 5 o'clock. We're like, well, I get to be with my wife now. I was like, let's go to the park. It was like, it's like, oh, whatever, just go back.
It's just like, let's go do something else.
So I wasn't so bad.
You guys.
But if
sorry, just for anybody that's watching here, I've got a not great connection. I'm not at home right now, and so sometimes there's some stuttering or delays between us, and we kind of have to refigure out where we are in the conversation here. So sorry about that to you guys and to people watching. What I was going to say though is, you guys posted those videos, and from the onboard, absolutely what you said, Carlos. You know, you couldn't see him until it was just the impact was there. Do you guys find that you're kind of like the allure of special events is a little lost now? Compared to a couple seasons ago.
Yeah. I mean, like the difference, like when we first started, if you don't know, I'll kind of go through the history of our team. I was basically like with another team, Revolution Sim Racing, and they did like a lot of Project Cars stuff and things like that. And I was like an iRacing hater from the get-go. I was like, oh, look at that game, you know, look at that sim, it looks so trash, you know, the graphics are so dumb. We took a break from Project Cars, and I basically was like, okay, cool, you know, 3 months, I'll try iRacing. And within like the first couple of days, I was hooked. With the Miata, and then like especially like the oval stuff, the Cup car. No, not the Cup car, the Carb Cup with the truck.
Carb Cup?
Daytona.
Cup.
Yeah.
Oh, and the trucks
are
fun, man.
Yeah. I was doing that like exclusively. So then we basically were like, okay, well, let's go do an endurance race. Excuse me. And sorry. So we did Daytona, and we actually podiumed that race. Nice. It was in the McLaren, and for me that was it. Like that was the bug that I needed. I was like, oh my god, this is like the best. So then basically what happened was because of the time zone difference, which is actually happens a whole lot with people in different teams and stuff like that. I was basically looking for kind of like an American team and really find one. And the owner of Geo, he had posted like a meetup to basically, because back then IMSA, the official races for IMSA were like super dead. Like, you know, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, it was just like a ghost town.
Really?
Yeah. So he basically had posted, this was like this is 2017. 16, and so he had posted just to get more people to kind of show up to do the US time slots and stuff like that. So, you know, I basically replied to the forum post. I was like, yeah, I'll join up. So, and then we kind of raced against each other, and that's how we kind of hooked up. And nice. they were part of SRT. What was the full name for that?
Speedworks. Yeah. Speedworks Racing Team.
Yeah, and they've competed in DGFX and IVRA before. So that was the team that Carlos. Yeah. So they were a group kind of together. They were kind of separating from SRT, and my group was kind of separating from RSR. So, you know, I was kind of like the link up, essentially be like, hey, like I have my guys and you have your guys. Let's just kind of, you know, make it all one. And that's kind of how Geodesic came to be.
Cool.
And, you know, that we got repopulated the IMSA time slot, and that, you know, that basically helped a whole lot to what it is now, essentially, because, you know, now, you know, the competition now is way higher than what it was.
Oh yeah.
You know, a couple of years ago. Like, it's just crazy seeing all these guys just come in and you know, just kind of tear it up. And so that's how basically we basically kind of got our start. And then we went like super hard, try hard mode on Daytona, where we were doing like basically 2 to 4 hours a day practice, like the month before for Daytona. Yeah. So it like I did like 1,500 laps. I think everybody did almost like 1,000 plus laps. So that's a lot of hours. Yeah. So Daytona comes around, and that was back then when the servers were really, really bad. You remember?
Yeah.
Like every time for special events, like those servers would just instantly crash. Not how it is now, obviously. I'm super happy that they kind of fixed that. So we basically were in top split. We were the number 2 car, I think, the first or second car, I remember, because my qualifying time was like P8 out of, you know, everybody. It was like in the top 10 essentially. We just didn't have the iRating to basically get, to top split. And at that time, I think we were all like 3,000 iRating, something like that. It's crazy how time flies. So the server crashed, and I think we went. I got kicked out because I was driving first, and we went a whole lap down. But then it brought everybody back in line again, just because the server was kind of kicking everybody out. So it back. That race by a whole full lap was probably like one of our best, like in terms of like being able to practice.
Hold on, Miguel, just 1 sec.
Go right, etc. So, and then after that, like to what it is now, actually, like you kind of look back and it's like, oh man, it was so much fun. But then now, like for example, this past race, Road Atlanta, it's just like, and the full course cautions, it's not like a hot lap event from start to finish.
Sorry, Miguel, I'm gonna just jump in for a second. Can you hear me?
We gotcha.
Okay, cool. I glitched out, so I think it probably didn't record there either. Do you mind going back to just the part where the qualifying, like you were qualifying, but it wasn't the top split?
Oh yeah. Well, if you remember, like before then, the qualifying was separate,
right?
Not during the actual race. So throughout that whole week, we were basically qualifying, and I basically managed to be like top 10. And even to this day, I think I have the fastest Ferrari GTE lap world record. Yeah,
that's cool.
I think De Jong is number 2. I don't know who else, but but because of our iRating, it's not like an average now like it is. It's we just didn't have the iRating. But we aside from the server problems, we did super well. We won that race.
Nice.
And then even throughout that year, like Sebring and etc., we did really well as a team. And then we kind of joined up with DGFX. We're like, hey, like it's like full stewards, all this stuff, and that kind of just basically ruined us to what it is now. We kind of now don't really have the patience, so to speak, I guess, because we're older and we've kind of done it a couple times now, where we're just like, it's just it's like it's a race, let's just do it, but our main focus is like IVRA league. That's like our bread and butter essentially. And even before that, again, DGFX, where we just loved. And it's funny too, because when we first started, I don't know if you remember specifically, but we would always have the worst luck. And that's serious. Like I don't know if you remember specifically Daytona at DGFX, where we like won 2, and then we got taken out.
I think we
got taken out by like an AM car. We got taken out in AM car. Both cars got taken out in turn 1.
I was just gonna say turn 1. I remember something about that. Yeah, man.
Yeah, because we even practiced like because it was open qual, so we were like, hey, let's work together. And so we just like our qual time was like half a second faster than everybody else. But yeah, that really, I was so mad for that race specifically. And that's kind of where for us it's kind of funny, because every time we get to like the last 20 minutes of a race, we usually don't say anything. Like our thing now is don't say anything about the race, just focus, because we've always had the worst luck when it comes to like the last 20 minutes. Something will always happen to us because we say something. We're like, hey, like, oh man, like we're doing so good. Yeah, we're like commentator's curse, exactly. Like, oh yeah, we're P1, we're doing well, and then like a couple laps later, boom, like we got taken out or something like that. So now we just don't say anything, and we kind of just do our thing. It's kind of sort of worked out for us now, where we kind of
and to to go back and kind of answer your question whether the special events have kind of faded, I think overall they have faded for pretty much the entire community that's been around for like longer than a couple of years, I will say.
Yeah.
Even like the bigger teams are not showing up in masses like they used to. Like Koan doesn't even show up to special events anymore.
Yeah,
just Daytona and
just like they'll do Daytona because that's
Le
like
Mans.
the bigger one, and Le Mans because
Yeah.
But they used to be there every single special event, and obviously, now there's PATH, there's all the other money
all the money
championships,
events,
which obviously they're going to focus on that. And just overall the influx of user base. When we started, there were less than 80,000 users in the service, some number like that. And over the past 5 years, it's double or triple, not counting Smurfs account.
Oh yeah, that's
oh my God.
Like overall, like the player, the user base has increased so massively, and obviously that inflates the I rating, without I rating decay and any of that sort of stuff. So you get to 7K and you just go do another account, and then that 7K stays there. That 7K is not being redistributed somewhere else. So that's why if you go to like the world stats, like the driver stats, like Gregor Hutu, it's still in the top 20. Wyatt Gooden, like all those guys that haven't driven in years, they're still there. So if they were to sign up today, they will still take all the top split spots regardless. So, and
even then, back then, it was super tough for like a brand new team to essentially kind of try and rise up through the ranks.
Yeah,
just because you needed to know like the inside and outs of the sim, whether that's the exploits for the setups and stuff like that, which is a very big part of the sim. Unfortunately, that's just and with us, for example, it was kind of very hard for us to kind of make that difference when making setups, because we would kind of gear setups more to like a realistic side of things. And we had to basically kind of, decouple that and push it to the side and be like, okay, this is a game. At the end of the day, it's a game. And your job is to essentially find the loopholes to basically go fast. Yes, there is a component to, the driver and talent and practice, of course. But, to get those little bit of extra tenths, you need, the setup has to, otherwise compete, with things,
I think I lost you there for a second again at the steps. Sorry, I think I lost you. I think I lost you there again at the setups. Just as you were saying, it is a game, and you've got to treat it like that. So you've got to kind of like So you're going to try to figure out the best way to get where you need to be.
Right. So unfortunately, at the end of the day, like as much as they want to say it's a sim, we've kind of peered through that curtain, so to speak, and real world cars you can compare to, it's just like, well, maybe they're fudging the numbers a little bit here and there, etc. So so once you have that kind of mentality to basically, okay, I need to basically set up this car like super loose with no wing and stuff with max tires, because the tires don't really give you a penalty, so you can just max out the cambers. And the toe to give you that extra little grip on the exit and stuff. It's just little things like that. But that was before then. Obviously, now we have, like Carlos was saying, the plethora of setup shops and stuff like that will give you or provide you really that really decent baseline where all you have to do is really kind of just tweak it to to your driving style, if you know what you're doing, obviously.
And that brings a whole bunch of people that, if you think about it from a gatekeeper kind of way, right? It's like they shouldn't be at the front of the pack, and they don't have the knowledge, but it does allow them to be there, even though they're 2,000 or 3,000 iRating and they're fighting with 5-6K guys, just because technically they are on the same pace and the setups kind of allow them. So it's kind of a balance of what school of thought you come from. It's
definitely something
kind of how you see it,
It's definitely something I've noticed. Like, my iRating right now is it's low. It's like 2,500 or something like that. And if I get into just privately hosted things or stuff like that, where there are other people with higher iRatings, sometimes you're on pace with those guys, and you're like, okay, like, so my pace is not necessarily as slow.
Right.
And something that you notice is sometimes it's like there's a big difference between being fast and racing and having racecraft. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And sometimes it's, there are people that are there and they are super fast, but it's almost like it's bumper cars. It's just, I'm fast and this is where I want to go. So move out of my way. And it's not racing. It's just,
you see that a lot in top split, where a lot of those people are super quick,
right?
But they have this kind of mentality where it's like, okay, I own this track, I don't care about you next to me,
right.
And they kind of, the racecraft just kind of goes out the window, and in a way, like, iRacing is kind of sort of to blame for that. Just because there is no penalty for there's like no live stewarding for that. And, eventually that kind of just gets to you. You're like, well, what's the point of putting all this time if, Joe Blow is going to dive to the inside of my corner and spin me out, when really he's coming from like 3-4 car lengths back and, just takes me out and ruins my race. It's just like, what's the point? Like, I'd rather go. It gets tiring. And you see that a lot. But I mean, that's just kind of how things are, and you kind of just have to move on from there. But the funny thing is, it's like you watch and you can see that the drivers are, they stay relatively clean. Because they have.
You watch what? Sorry.
I'm saying that. If you watch like IVRA, Neo, SEO, like those leagues have such a stringent, policy when it comes to, racecraft and driving, that those drivers have to, basically have to adhere to that stuff. So they have to play nice. I mean, sometimes that obviously doesn't work, but, they get the penalty that, they deserve, instead of just nonchalantly, keep on driving.
Oh, sorry. As you just continue on to your
exactly. So it's not a question of.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, so they can do it. It's just, unfortunately, the way the competition is set up, with these, official races and stuff like that, is just kind of And the protest system as well. That's another topic.
That's a whole other.
That's probably like a whole other bag.
I think.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I'm just gonna ask this, and then I'm gonna jump up fast, so I won't be on camera, but I'll mute myself and I'll still hear you guys. The first race we had in endurance this year, and it's not uncommon that especially in endurance, the first race of the season can be a little sloppy, just to be frank. There's a lot of it seems like everybody is just very anxious to get things done. You know what I mean? It's like, I've got to make this move now. I've got to get by this person right now. And it's like maybe it's the off season and you're not used to being in stewarded sessions again, or maybe it's remembering that it's not the same as official. And also, there are a ton of new faces, so they're not used to what the system is that we have, right? What did you guys see in the first race? Like, did you find that from your side, or was that more of a perceived thing from kind of like watching the broadcast? And like, what's your take on that? Just given like what we were just talking about with top splits and stuff like that.
I agree with that statement. The funny thing is that us driving, DGFX and stuff like that, we've always seen throughout the seasons, especially like the pre-qualifiers will always be super clean, just because everybody's just trying to make it, essentially. So they're gonna adhere to the rules and be like, okay, we only need to make like top 8 and we'll be fine, something like that. But usually the first race, that's where kind of like the other drivers of the other teams kind of get in that haven't really practiced and stuff like that. If they practice with themselves, but not with traffic, especially if they didn't have time to join the FB sessions. But usually that first race, we've seen that it's always kind of be a bit chaotic, and then the second race onwards, it's usually fine. So we'll have to see.
Yeah,
see how
I think the bigger issue is always, the first race is always going to be chaotic and with new faces. But to an extent also, at least this particular round of the championship, with the new format, with three races and 3 races. Now the first round is like, okay, this is do or die, because if you don't do well in that first round, you're essentially going to be on the back foot for the rest. So you can see that level of aggression probably going up a little bit on that first round. I think for the most part, all the other ones, all the incidents that I saw, and that's the biggest difference, that I don't think there was an intentional thing. There might have been one, but I'll reserve my judgment on that for private conversations. But aside from that one team, most of the other ones are going to be racing incidents, or they felt like they were racing incidents. Obviously, some of them are going to get penalized, some of them are going to be net codes, some of them are going to be whatever outcome. But they were not out there trying to intentionally wreck somebody. Which happens, like Miguel said, happens now on pretty much every official. I'm on the inside. If I track out wide and take you out, so be it. I know my car is going to be okay because I'm on the inside.
Yeah, right? They use your car as
they're using the physics of the sim in that regard.
Yeah,
which sucks, but you don't see that as much in IVRA, which is a great thing. And obviously that's because there's penalties for every one of those incidents. But it should be okay. It's obviously also track dependent. Some tracks are just going to be worse than others.
But it's funny that too. Like, I don't know if you remember, Julian, though, but like, a couple of years back with DGFX, we didn't really have like that penalty matrix, etc. So it was just kind of like, the penalties weren't as severe, so to speak. Obviously now it's nice that we have the drive-through and stuff like that, but I don't even remember. But that was like a really big thing where every race was just basically like crazy. It was just like, people were just driving really crazy, and eventually like that's where that everybody was just like, okay, we really need to come up with more harsher punishments to kind of get to people's mind where it's fine to tell people like, hey guys, like you guys need to cool it down, blah blah blah, but that only goes so far. Like if after a couple of races you don't see that, then you'd be like, okay, if you mess up, that's like 10 seconds stop and go, and there goes your race. Like, sorry, but you guys need to kind of get your head around that fact that maybe you shouldn't be going for that move. And it's kind of funny, like in our race, me and Carlos will usually always like to go through the race incident report that you guys write, and then we'll go through the race and then kind of do like our own thing and see if maybe like our like the way we would perceive as stewards would agree kind of like with what you guys are saying essentially, which is, you know, you guys we usually agree pretty much like 99% of the time. There might be like some incidents or something, like for example, like, you know, what happened with to us, like our GT3 car, where, you know, the whole left side of the field basically took off with the GTE, and then we were on the start. Yeah. So like for me, I would have been like, okay, caution, redress the field immediately, because you could just see that just from looking at it from the 5-10 seconds of looking at the replay. And that would, for me, that's, you know, that would have been the just course, instead of maybe going like waiting the couple laps to let kind of let those cars go build that gap, because by the time we crossed the line, you know, they were already like 10-15 seconds ahead of us, you know. So when you give them that you know, drive-through penalty, the only car that wasn't affected was, you know, the impulse car, because they were so far ahead of the field that it negated that, you know, that penalty essentially. So even though we came out like 2 seconds ahead. No, not 2 seconds ahead. We were 2 seconds behind them when they came out of the start, you know, the drive-through. But still, it's just like, you know, you're like, oh, well, you know, this could have been handled differently, but you know, that's just kind of how.
Yeah, and it's always
at the end of the day, we knew like, hey, you know, there's going to be a caution eventually, so let's just kind of put our heads down and focus on our laps, our race, and you know, we'll worry about, you know, the rest later. But you know, it's
sorry, I'm listening here. I'm just trying to my computer. I'm not on my normal computer, and right now my recording thing is telling me my CPU is overloaded. So I'm listening. I'm trying to stop all of my processes that I don't need right now. I think it's good that, you know, you guys, and I'm sure other teams do as well, kind of go back and we'll have a look and read through to see, you know, what's our take on this, like, and you know, if there are differences, why are there differences? Why do we think this? And then kind of like, you know, thinking it over themselves first and be like, okay, you know, that's how we arrived at this conclusion compared to them, and stuff like that. And the start was definitely like being a novel situation.
That's never happened.
It's definitely.
I know that's never happened ever, you know, in the history of, you know, IVRA, in DGFX. But I guess it's just more along the lines of, you know, if you've kind of, you know, seen enough racing and stuff like that, that should be like the first thing that comes to your mind, especially it's just like, oh, okay, you know, like safety car, redress the field. You know, it's all good.
It's always easy to play.
But going back to like the whole, you know, having those stiffer penalties did clean up, you know, the field, like especially towards the end of DGFX. I think it was season 5, the season, you know, or 6, I think it was something like that. To what it is now today, obviously, you know, like, you know, I think the penalties are fair. It does promote clean racing, you know, but it's like you're saying, like at the end of the day, it does come to the team and that person driving. Like, you know, you kind of have to know how people, you know, like our job when we're as team managers or drivers, it's you know, we have to kind of know how people react under certain conditions, you know, especially like frustrating conditions where they get taken out and then it's just red mist, you know, where, you know, we're in the background, be like, hey, like, you know, don't worry about it. It's all right. You know, calm down or something like that, you know, because, you know, usually that's just the psychology of things where, you know, people get that red mist and it's just like nothing matters. I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to, you know, everybody else. So
I think, for sure at some point, most people have had it. Yep. You see red and you're just like, okay, I got to do what I'm going to do now. But you're not thinking it through much. Yeah. Especially now that,
you know, like the whole, because before, you know how we had the incident limit and stuff like that. Now we don't really have that. So, you know, you get red misted, it's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Like, I know 1Xs are, you know, it doesn't really matter anymore. So I'm just going to, you know, go even harder now than what it was before. But yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to hear, you know, how everybody kind of does you know, the way they manage their teams and stuff like that. And, you know, a lot of it is actually very much the same, like, especially throughout some of these, you know, teams, you know, the way they prepare. Although we kind of prepare differently just because, you know, we don't really have a whole lot of time. So we kind of have to make our time as efficient as possible. And we kind of go through the philosophy of like what Martin Kroenke said. He wrote an article a couple years back about the way they practice in Coanda. I don't know if that's the same now, but at that time, you know, they were basically doing like 2-hour blocks of practice, essentially. So like every day they would just do 2 hours, and within that 2 hours, they would try and accomplish as much as they could, you know, along with driving. And we've kind of stuck to that philosophy pretty much. So, and it's worked out well. So you know, when we try and prepare, we'll do like, you know, the weekend before we'll start, and then throughout the week, we kind of basically, you know, try and get the set done within the first 2 or 3 days, and then kind of just practice off that. And usually when we kind of look at the free practice sessions, we'll kind of just look at where everybody's at, you know, basically look at ourselves, our pace, see if we're missing anything. Sometimes we do. Sometimes like our set is, you know, just doesn't work how we would think. It's kind of, and it kind of happened in club sport where we built a set for the cup car. We were blind basically. We're like, I don't know how this car wants to react, because the tires were doing something different, and then, you know, the whole car was just not. You know, I basically was like, I hate this car. You know, like, I don't want to drive this. And, you know, and it just basically turned out that, you know, the set we made kind of worked out in our favor in that instance. But we've had other times where, you know, like our set is just not on par there, and it's missing a couple tenths, and, you know, we kind of just have to, you know, run with it, so to speak. So we usually try and do our due diligence. You know, I'm sure every team does that. In that case, kind of look at where everybody is. You know, usually by now we know if people are sandbagging or not. So we'll usually like deduct a couple tenths or something like that. But for the most part, you know, we try and keep it, you know, at those 2 hours, and then if we need to make changes, we will. But it's worked out well for us. You know, we haven't had any problems in that regard. And again, it just comes to trying to be flexible, you know, with every team member, because, you know, everybody's from everywhere, different time zones. You know, it's tough managing a pretty big group of guys.
It can be, yeah, especially with the time zones. Even internally with us at IVRA, you know, it's like, it means that, you know, sometimes Casper has some pretty late nights, and you know, sometimes like my early day, or, you know, up until midday is, you know, prioritized around this stuff, and then I have to get to other stuff later in the day. So, but most of the time it works out, I think, for everybody, which is good. Like, you know, as long as you're organizationally, like, you can put things together, then, you know, it'll work out. And, you know, you guys as a team, just as I remember saying this to, I don't know if it was Casper or somebody else, but just, I think it's always interesting when you compete against people, and you kind of see them grow. You know what I mean? At least it's something that I always look at, and maybe that's just I've mentioned in the past, like my coaching lens. Like, I've been a coach for a long time, so it's just you look at things a certain way after that. You know what I mean? So seeing people progress is something that you always like to see. And just, you know, mentioning earlier in the Daytona race, like, you guys getting taken out, and now going to being consistent and usually battling for podium positions or at least top 5 is a cool thing to see. So, it definitely shows the time and the effort put in to kind of, figuring everything out, figuring out your groove, like what works for you guys, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would say that's actually been a pretty big plus for us because, we may not always have the ultimate pace. Like some tracks we will, and you can see it in the TFR Lab statistics where we're like within that top 10. But I think our biggest strength is when it comes to strategy throughout the race and knowing the rules. Because what we found is, a lot of teams will kind of just gloss over the rules. So I don't know if you remember, just to point out, like last season for Spa, for example,
for what? Sorry, last season for
round 1 Spa, if you remember the first race with the LMP2. We basically took a couple hit, we were leading through those first couple hours, and then we got hit with a couple drive-throughs and stuff like that. So we kind of fell back behind. But then, what was it? Towards the late hour, when there was 38 minutes left or something like that, we decided to come in early, just because we had that experience where we knew, and the rules were saying okay, after 30 minutes. There's not going to be any safety cars or anything like that. So, there still is that possibility of let's just come in and top the car off because, we'd be fine. We wouldn't have to worry about that. And sure enough, look, what happens was 2 laps later, the safety car rolls out. And then, when it comes to having people on the track, we had usually we'll have our strategist Andrew. He'll be looking around the track and stuff like that. But I think for this race we actually had 1 or 2 people looking at the pits as well. Just because we before that season, I think you guys had missed a couple pit penalties.
Okay.
So we were like, hey, let's just add a couple of people so we can throw in the incident report sheet if they break the rules.
Okay.
So was it the top 4 car or something like that? They had to get emergency service, but they ran through the pit exit or something like that. It was something weird like that. So we basically put in those protests. We were like, oh my God, we're going to be P1 because these guys didn't read the rules that, they had to wait at the pit exit cone to let the field pass by.
Which is actually a very surprising recurring penalty. It seems like every race that we.
But here's the thing about that though. It's what I found and noticed is in the heat of the moment, you're going to automatically revert to what the muscle memory is. And if you do a lot of official races, and if you've never done IVRA, for example, and you don't really know and practice the rules, then you're going to essentially break that rule, which is one of the more common ones that we've seen. And the other one too is once that safety car rolls out, you basically have to come in and get emergency service and stuff like that. Or if not, basically come back out again if you have the feel for it.
And you guys actually, in probably one of the greatest strategy single moments was Mid-Ohio last season. Did you, so basically for people that weren't around or weren't watching it, you guys, there was, I think it was VEC and maybe another team. I think it was both Porsches, but kind of through, what turns would that be? I guess 8 or 9 or something. As you come through the S section, and then there's kind of the valley before you get to the left to go to the final turn. They had gone off there, and they needed a tow, and you guys just dipped into the pits and were probably a couple stall lengths away from making it versus getting a penalty, and you were able to do that. And I don't remember the result you guys got, but if it wasn't,
we won that race. Yeah.
And it basically came down to that. So did you have somebody that was watching for?
Yeah. We had,
okay, there's gonna be a safety car coming.
Yeah, we had Andrew. Well, no, because what happened was we had Andrew, our strategist, and what happened was I was only like a couple cars behind after that happened. So I saw, as I was coming through the start finish line, I saw the Porsche, basically hugging that wall, and I was like, hey, like, oh, like they're gonna call, watch this Porsche. It's pretty badly damaged. They're probably gonna call a safety car. So our guys were basically like watching that guy for the entire race. So we were like, all right, we need to come in. So I was like trying to haul ass, trying to get to the pits. And what's funny was, it's like, you saw, I was trying to pass a car on the outside, but I hit the marbles, and the car immediately went straight into the wall towards the pit entrance.
Yeah.
So when the broadcast cut back to us, you basically saw me at the tire wall, and it was just because I was trying to hurry up, and the outside line was just horrible. So we basically dipped in as soon as pretty much the yellow was called. So we were like, oh my god, you just basically saved a whole stop. So and that kind of, and the funny. And that kind of goes back to VIR too, if you don't remember, when we went like 3 laps down, I think it was.
Yeah.
But because of the class restart, we were able to make that whole, and then we made the mistake of taking tires and at the end and not taking tires, and we probably would have won that race too. But that's just kind of one of those. Yeah, that was kind of one of those decisions where, like, well, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, so that's something that I always loved about it. With racing with safety cars is, like, for the most part, you can always get yourself back into it if you can sort yourself out and just figure out, like, how to make it work. You know what I mean? Like, when to take the tires if you need it, how to stay on the lap you need to be on, and all that kind of stuff. So you're never quite out of it unless your TCR rockets into orbit, like we've had it some races last year.
And usually that we always go expecting that. Always, pretty much, it's like, oh, there's going to be a safety car. You don't need to go all out because it's going to come back again. The funny thing is like, Club Sport didn't have its first safety car. And we were worried that in the whole entire race, because, we weren't that much. I mean, we were quick, but we weren't that quick compared to, what's the team? I think Impulse with Pascal. He was the fastest by like, it was like, I don't know, 50 hundredths or something like that. It wasn't a whole lot, but their car was set up to where they were much quicker on the exit acceleration. So they were using a little bit less swing. So we were like, oh my god, if we have a safety car and we have to fight with these guys, like, it's gonna be crazy. But it turned out that there were no safety cars. But that's just how Montegi is as well. So
less space.
But we were surprised.
And, I mean, it's fair that you're surprised. Like, that's the first one we ever had where we didn't have a safety car. And how much did it change your guys' strategy throughout the race as it kind of just kept going, and you're like, okay, maybe we won't have one. Like, everything's pretty clean right now. Like,
well, we were just kind of going like, okay, let's
just of, like, hit stints. You know what I mean?
Well, that too, and just trying to stay clean in traffic. But it wasn't until the last 30 minutes, because that's just how the rules are. Once we got to like that 25-minute mark, we were like, okay, we're good. Let's just focus on what we need to do for this last stop. Now that we know that there isn't going to be a safety car, but we're always worried until that 30-minute mark. We're always worried. We always know there's going to be something crazy, something going on.
I think for Motegi, the bigger challenge that we had was with minimum drive times.
Oh yeah, that was
Miguel had to finish. I think it was Miguel that had to finish the race instead of Tristan,
Graham,
much faster.
No, Graham.
But we couldn't really put him back in the car. Or Graham was driving, and then Tristan couldn't get back in the car. because he would have gone over the drive time. So that was really the only kind of strategy change on the. And that kind of sucks because you have one guy that should be in the car that is your silver bullet, if you want to think of it that way, and you just can't use it because then you have to abide by the rules. So it's a toss up in those senses, and it's one of the things that we brought up to you guys to make sure it's drive time as opposed to laps or whatever it is. So it's a bit more consistent. But that was not having a caution really threw us off a ball for a ride there.
I think.
But it's now in the rules basically.
And we didn't have our strategist. Well, I mean, he kind of was looking through Discord because I was asking him questions, but he wasn't with us that day. So it was basically it fell on me to basically kind of go through everything. So I spent like 30 minutes basically trying to make sure, like, are we good on drive time? Are we not? Like, well, what's going on? Like, but luckily, they just kind of it kind of just fell, and we got that win.
Nice.
So, but we were worried the entire time.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the next rounds that are coming up? How are you feeling for them? Do you like the tracks?
I haven't driven Red Bull Ring yet. I mean, I know the track, but I haven't driven it yet for iRacing, and hopefully, we'll see. I guess, obviously, I gotta start, doing all the testing and stuff like that for all the other cars too. So we'll see what the data says on that. So usually, it's kind of nice to be able to now that I can step back a little bit, kind of help more on that side, because I do love doing the BOP and the data side of things. I still love that. That kind of just keeps my skills kind of sharp in terms of being able to practice in different cars and things like that.
For anybody that just as Miguel says that, for anybody that doesn't know, we have like a BOP kind of team that helps out with creating the BOP for everything. And so TFR Labs are the ones that kind of are the main source of the data and kind of like directing, where like power reduction or weight increases and stuff like that should go. And then we have a handful of pro drivers that are, within IVRA and others that aren't within IVRA that will, go through and do just a lot of laps for us.
I still can't believe I still can't believe we were able to get all that data after the new build came out.
That was nuts.
Like so we had 2 days. We had 2 days to get all that done.
We had 2 days, and we got basically like 40 hours of testing done between all the drivers. And it's it's not just like qualifying; it's full race stints, and then it's looking at different ballasts and what X number of laps with this ballast in this car, plus add another 20, test it again, add another 20, test it again, test the weight, like the power reductions. It's a lot, but I think for us it's important because it's the integrity side of things. It's like if we want to make the best series that there is to race for all you guys that are racing in it, like that's the work we have to do. If it takes a lot of time, it does. But we want to
and that's why we were exactly, and that's why we were like, hey, the IVRA guys asked us to help out with this, and we're all for it, just because myself personally, like, I want things to be as competitive as possible. Obviously, yes, some cars will do a little bit better at certain tracks than other cars, but us having that option of being able to tune these cars to per specific track for BOP, it just makes it more competitive for everybody, where you don't feel like, team one got lucky for the win just because they were in that super OP car, that can run an excess amount of time, or can go these 2 to 3 extra laps because of fuel, because it uses so much less fuel, just stuff like that. So
that's great, because then it's just like you get people that are driving cars that suit their driving style, and it's just true racing rather than just
exactly
So
and I
and
think
it's funny.
yeah,
And it's funny. It's funny too. When we were kind of picking cars, the guys in my team were like, "Oh, well, should we go? I would love to drive the Porsche, but it's not going to be the fastest car." I'm like, "Just pick whatever car you want, man. Like, there's going to be a BOP." They're like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Like, it's going to be BOP per track. Don't worry about it. Just
and I think that's one of the bigger differences with IVRA is that we know the BOP is going to be efficient. Like most people, when they do BOP for whatever series, they'll just like, oh, they can all do the same lap time, and that they're balanced because they can do the same lap time. But some cars are going to have certain strength. Some cars are going to have strength pretty much everywhere. Like they can make the certain lap time, but on acceleration, out they're gone. So the car trailing is never going to be able to catch it, even though it's doing the exact same lap time, right? So even for our own championship, that's kind of always been the philosophy that we try to apply. It's like, they can do the certain lap time, but do they have an equal opportunity to attack the car in front? And we've seen that with some cars, it's really tough to have them at that level where you have to kind of give it up in a way. So it's just a track dependent thing. But
especially the BMW and the Porsche last season in GT4s, just you couldn't touch it. Like the Porsche, you're great on corners and curves, and then as soon as you get a chance to pull away in the BMW, like you make up all your time on a lap there, basically.
Right. And then you look at the laps, it's about the same thing, except for I think it was the summer series where it was really off, but. It's always going to be like that. There's always going to be one strength that's better than other, even though they have the same lap times. And that's why a lot of people focus. And we internally was like, that makes no sense. It can all do this in a lap time, but you got to be able to attack.
If you remember last season in the summer series when we were fighting Manatee, they were in the BMW, we were in the Porsche, and then we went to Imola. And then I had basically mentioned like, hey, like, the BMW needs to get BOP'd because it's basically running like a second a lap faster, and it can, like, at that time they hadn't reduced the draft, so the car had a ton of draft power, where it was passing like 2 to 3 Porsches easily by the end of that straight at Imola. There wasn't any BOP applied, so when the race came, it was just like. All right, so we were driving it, and it was just like they just basically like just took off like a second a lap faster than we were. We just couldn't do anything. It was just like, well, I mean, there's nothing we can do. It is what it is. So
that's part of why we changed our approach to BOP2 this season, because we know
I was happy for because
that was difficult to do like last season because. We knew those differences existed, but we just didn't know the best kind of way to approach it at the time.
Right.
Because technically you can do the same lap time. And so, building out from that's tough without the same type of data that we have now.
Yeah.
So, I think this year it's been going well. The first race for endurance, I thought the BOP worked out pretty well. Sport.
Yeah, we were pretty much bang on. I mean, for the limited time that we had, we got it. We got that baseline that we needed essentially. Especially knowing kind of that iRacing essentially changed a couple of things. The way they, the turbo cars will be dependent on altitude with power, and they'll be more powerful at altitude. So it's like now it's like another level that we have to kind of take into consideration.
That's something we have to look for coming up with Red Bull Ring, because it's right there. Like that'll likely be a power reduction. We'll see.
Which is funny because I know somebody mentioned on the Discord like, oh, Red Bull Ring. I think they were driving the BMW. Like, so I guess the BMW is gonna get a power down. I was like, yep, more than likely. But I mean, it was.
It's good so far, and hopefully in the next few days we'll be able to get that all together. We've got the first race for the HyperX GT Sprint Series this weekend, so that's kind of the priority for BOP now, and that should be done hopefully today, for sure though, before FP2 starts up in the next couple of days. And then, that won't be as often as endurance, having like every single race for endurance, but we'll revisit when we need to.
Which is same with like, even though club sport, like, the funny thing was just like you're saying, like club sport, it just basically came out to like, unfortunately we're kind of hamstrung because the way the cars were built. The Porsche obviously is going to be quicker, even with 20 kilos. Like we were finding out, like, like the more weight we add, the faster it gets. Like, what's up with that? If you remember. And then it's just like the BMW and the McLaren. It's like, well, you have to use second gear out of the corners, and they're too short, so you have to use third, and that's where all that time loss is. So it's just like, but it's fun though. I mean, it's fun going through all that data, just to seeing how the cars, kind of react and stuff like that. So it'd be nice to actually get more options in terms of, for admins and stuff like that, do these type of races, these leagues and stuff like that. Like, I think there aren't enough options per se, for the admins. Like,
maybe one day that'd be cool if they kind of added more, I guess, just protocol into what you can do on the admin side. It'd definitely be cool. Yeah, for sure. No, that's definitely needed. Yeah. So speaking of the HyperX series, are you guys in that? I don't think you are this season. Right?
No, we had somebody. I think Graham. He wanted to do it, but it just came down to, like, we were doing endurance and club sport.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So tacking on another series was going to be pretty tough for us, especially with the schedule that we have.
Yeah.
And even now, like right now, we're kind of facing the issue of some of us are going to be going to Road Atlanta for the Rio race.
Yep.
In November.
Sick.
Yeah. So that's why I remember I think I pinged you. So I'm like, hey, like, is there a reason why you guys like put like this is gonna suck for us? So
man, scheduling seasons is intense. There's so many like real life events and special events that are just constantly taking place.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
And it's tough too, because what we found out as well is that you kind of have to go with the schedule of the broadcaster too as well.
Right.
Like when we were, for our league, we basically asked them, like, hey, like, what are the days that you have available? And then we kind of go back and forth. So, we would love to do on the weekends, but the problem is that at the end of the day, it's just that they have so much stuff on the weekends that it's just hard.
What do you guys broadcast with?
Schedule in. We've gone with SynSpeed just because we've known them for a couple of years. So those guys have been great.
Nice.
And then we basically do it every Thursday, right? Every bi-weekly Thursday.
It's bi-weekly Thursdays. We've been looking at changing formats a couple times and kind of condense the season a little bit so it kind of fits. So we don't have issues with builds. Like we done 8 rounds bi-weekly, and we always end up having one build after round 2 and one build after like round 7. So we always kind of struggle with that a little bit. So we've been trying to make some changes, but it's like a whole bunch of moving pieces between us, the broadcaster, the partners that so it's kind of like, so what do we do now? So
and then, something else that you have to consider too is other series. Like, obviously you're competing against them for the people that you want to be racing, but at the same time, like, you have to be aware that, when their schedule is running is going to contribute to, who can run in yours. Right. Exactly. So there's so many different things that go into it.
Yeah. Because our main thing for our series, for example, we wanted to kind of promote a more competitive atmosphere for the US guys, because at the end of the day, like when it comes to the road side, it's very European heavy.
For sure.
And there's really only a couple, in the US that have that kind of pace. So, we wanted to kind of bring that forward to kind of help those guys kind of, come up and stuff like that. And It's kind of helped out. I mean, we always get asked like, when's the next one coming?
Yeah.
But it's definitely tough to kind of schedule all that, especially when we got all, our other duties with, like IVRA and stuff like that. So, before we would always do like IVRA or NEO or CO and then the special events, but it just got to be, it's just way too much. Like, I think you should just focus on one or two and then just keep at that and have fun with it. So,
yeah. Guys, I got to run fairly soon here. I've got another kind of like conference-y thing coming up. But we have a few minutes. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about or mention just before we sign off for today?
No,
I think it's been a pretty good one. We've covered a lot of stuff. I thought it was a pretty good
discussion.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's kind of finally good to put faces to names. Like I've talked to you several times, and a couple times I've gone into the race control room and kind of cause a ruckus and not know those faces. So it's always good too. And at the end of the day, as much as competitive and realistic that we want to make this, my biggest takeaway has always been the friends that I've made along the way. It's like not just the teams, not just people that we met within our team, but we met so many people that we end up, when we went to Daytona, we were all walking down, and Zach and David Haynes, like a whole bunch of people just recognized the name of the shares. Like, oh my God, you guys are Geo, and then we started talking.
That happened to me at Watkins. My brother and I went to Watkins Glen, and I saw a few guys with huge ass shirts on, and we were like,
right,
it's huge ass, yeah. So
it's always good, and you end up meeting them and kind of hanging out and developing friendships. It's always been the more important aspect for me. It's a social thing after all, even though
it's that camaraderie that you build up with everybody. It's
for sure,
100%.
Definitely a big thing. So
and it's true. Like everybody kind of their like competitive headspace can be different, but at the end of the day, I think 95% or more of us are all here for the same reason. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And more than likely, all of us would get along if it was just talking like it is now. But sometimes that's not conveyed through just text or somebody being super pissed.
Exactly.
And like they're being super pissed. They're not actually being a dick. You know what I mean? Or they're not like intending to be. And sometimes it's just okay, take your time out for a second, man. Just chill. Like, think about what you're saying.
But we've had that a lot.
Yeah. But it's all good, and definitely agree. It's really nice to put a face to a name.
Yeah, for sure.
It's nice that you're doing. Because I remember a couple. Was it? I don't know what team. I don't know if you remember what team it was. It was doing like these podcasts for like a little while. It was like a Porsche team on DGFX. I was trying to look up their name.
MOATF, I think. MOATF.
Yeah.
My opinion, they're for fact or something like that. I think it was. Yeah. And I think they were involved with Torque Freak maybe for a while, or there was like a combination of stuff there. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, they were trying to.
I always think it's always nice to kind of get to know, kind of the teams and, the history and stuff like that and how they go about their things. So I'm super happy that you're doing these podcasts. Finally.
Finally. Thanks, man. Yeah, it was, honestly, like it was mentioned in the past, and it was one of the things that like, we had always wanted to get to, but with a lot of the other plans and everything else, you kind of like triage and be like, okay, priority right now, and hopefully this.
Exactly.
And to be honest, like it's got better reception than I thought it would. Like I wasn't, maybe not better than I thought, but just I had no idea what the reception would be like. If people would be interested, if people would actually listen to it or not. But regardless of that, I did think it was important that like, at least we tried, because for the community and just the thought of the community, it was a good thing that we do start to, and it is cool to like learn about teams and who these people actually are, and how you guys approach races, and like how are these people thinking, because when you get on track too, like it helps you to understand that, okay, like, you know, I'm thinking about this one way, but maybe that's not the best way because now I see other people are doing it different ways and that works for them.
Yeah.
So, you know, does that mean I can get better by like incorporating something like this, or, you know, vice versa? It opens up a lot of doors for that kind of stuff too. So
it actually gets worse for us because every time you interview somebody, we're like, oh my God, dude, this guy's so young. Like, it's like we're so old, man.
Yeah,
like,
it's so true. Yeah.
I just want to say, like, oh yeah, wait until you're 38. Let's see what you're doing.
Let's see what you can do.
See what you're doing.
Yeah.
Oh man,
in terms of
it's
racing.
so true. Yeah, there's a guy that just like, you know, speaking of like more like North American centric leagues, like you guys run one, and like I still try to get into race when I can, and I do like, you know, private leagues still. So there's one that I'm running right now that's Ricmotech.
Yeah.
And
we know.
This young dude, Elvis Rankin, like basically, like if you watch him getting interviewed, you can basically track him going through puberty. He's so young, you know what I mean? Like, and now he's all of a sudden he's like, I think he's like 14 or 15 or something, and like he stopped racing in this season because he's like got his pro license now, and he's like going after real world stuff, which is just like ludicrous, but. It's simultaneously super cool to see these young kids doing well in this, and like God, like they're 15 to 20 years younger than I am.
We've had a couple young guys. We had Elias Sepinen. He's on BS now.
He's on BS competition.
BS Sport. Yeah. Cool. So Chris Solom, he's in Team Redline. He was with us for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think he still has the record for the most, or our team has the records for the most spa incidents from like 2 years ago.
Oh God!
I think we still because we were pissed off because they were like, oh, we're not gonna have any incidents. So we're like, all right, cool, then let's have fun with this. I think Hugh Jass was doing it too, and I think we ended up.
I think everybody was doing it. I think that was that race. It was Lando and Max Verstappen.
Frontline
car, and they were going out from on the dirt, like on the actual dirt before the back straight, like the double right hander.
Out in
the middle of the dirt, just because they had the grip somehow, and they just off they went, and we're like, okay, that's a bit much. So we couldn't really fault them because everybody told iRacing at the time, it's like, you need to fix that. I mean, you need to put an incident limit because people will abuse it. Even not to that extreme, but people will abuse it regardless. And then lo and behold, people did.
Yeah.
So
but 100%. I mean, those guys, you know, they've gone and done great things. You know, Nathan Lewis was another one that was with us for a while. He's in BS now as well. He's doing very well. You know, so for the most part, we always get like, you know, kind of the younger guys that we kind of bring up, and then, you know, they go off and go up to those bigger legacy teams, you know, to drive. And it's great to see that they, you know, kind of take in that what we teach them essentially, and kind of teach them the tricks of, okay, well, this is what you need to do with the setup and stuff like that. And, you know, but at the end of the day, it's all, you know, it's all practice. Like, you know, you still need to put in the time. Like, that's the only thing you can't buy. You can always buy the best of the best in terms of equipment, you know, PC and all that stuff. But, you know, that's what we always tell our guys is you got to put the time in, you know, otherwise, you know, you're not really going to go anywhere. So,
100%. And definitely the advantage of the younger crowd is that they have much more of that. Great. All the power to you for it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I mean, I went through that too. When, you know, after I got back from deployment, and I was going through my medical thing for my back, you know, I had basically was just going to therapy for my back, so I had a lot of time to basically kind of drive and, you know, bring myself up. But obviously now it's just like, now I work afternoons. I have like, you know, time is super hard now to come by, so it's just like, oh, I'm gonna go do this instead of racing. And so enjoy. So if I would say to the young guys, enjoy it as much as you can.
100%. So get married, have a kid,
you get older, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Wise words. I like it. Cool, guys. Well, thanks a lot. This was a fun one. I also just noticed, and I do like your sweaters. I want to potentially get some at some point.
Yeah,
nice
we're working on that. We're trying to get our merch stuff back up again, and
nice.
I mean, we actually do on our website, geodesicracing.com. We do have merch up that you can buy, but nothing like this nice.
Yeah, this were specially made for the team.
Yeah,
VIPs.
So we do gotta get another run of new stuff up. So we'll get to that. Add that to the to-do list.
Nice.
Yeah, that's on our to-do list for sure.
I'll keep an eye out.
So.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks again. We'll talk soon. We'll see you on the track. And for everybody else watching, we'll see you guys next week.
Yep. Take it easy, guys.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Cool.